11. How now? I say that one would do best to begin even now to think in terms of having a whole new lease on life. And as it were, you can begin to create all over again, starting with the most intimate things in your world, such as your physical bodies. I would suggest, were I you, I would begin to put a whole new pattern in the ethers. Why not? There's no reason to wait until the very date to begin your creations, when you can have them already in, well, high gear by that time, so it'll be a more smooth transition, going from one to the other. So I say, why not compile a list? I'm only sharing with you what I would do if I were still on earth, but which we'll all be observing from where we are in our vantage points of spirit. Were I you, I would compile a list of the different categories of my own life, beginning with, let us say, the physical body, and list a few things that you would want to see it becoming. Oh, dear ones, don't doubt the transmutive ability of this time frame. Indeed, I would suggest that you ponder it, for even now we're close enough that you will be able to sense, those of you who endeavor to, how different it can be. You'll feel this interesting, almost heady feeling of no ceiling on your creation. Now, those of you who are familiar with my work and how I've worked through this particular medium over the years and now decades will come to know that in times I have said, God is the big yes in the universe. Man only says no, indicating that all things are possible, even though not probable from your points of view. Nay, what has that to do with it? Very little. Unless you give it power, then of course that is your own story and your own concoctions. I wouldn't suggest it, though. What I suggest is that you begin to see things precisely the way you should want them to be. For some of you, that will present a problem, simply in that you're not accustomed to thinking in terms of, well, I've oft used this other phrase, why not contemplate things that you would normally think are just too good to be true? Well, unfortunately, I see that many have quite a large category when it comes to that, and in that you've tucked, well, I'm afraid, a lot of your dreams and your fondest wishes. Now is the time to crack open that place. Let all your lovelies out. Come to see them about you. I am referring to everything, like those of you who have thought how sweet it would be to be able to observe the elemental kingdom. Why not? The fairies that are about, the little people, the gnomes, and in the sky, the lovely sylphs that decorate your skies, for those of you who have got the vision to see them. The elementals that come and go in your daily lives, the little ones that adorn your plants, your gardens, and all these, many, 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 I could go on and on. Why not see them as part of your daily lives? You know they are there now, you know that, and many of you will sense them, and occasionally perhaps you've caught glimpses of them. I know this medium was quite shocked the very first time, and at that time he was living still in Hawaii. He happened to be in a very remote area, a valley that he lived in at the time, and he was in the point of washing his face early in the morning, and he suddenly looked up, and lo, straight out of a log that had fallen into the water, he saw a little guy step right out with his arms like this. And he was startled, and then he remembered that talk about these little beings called menehune, who live there all over the islands. They still do. And he sat there and he had a mental conversation with this little man, who then vanished as quickly as he'd come. though he did watch him step right out of the log, that he himself was nearby. So experiences like that, which he was not expecting, of course, but that he was pleasantly surprised by, why not have those? Only if you care to see the little ones, you need not. But there might be many other things in your lives that you would want to add. Now is the time. So, one could say that a lot of my message is simply that. To prepare your wish lists and make them as, well, I'll say real as possible. Simply because they will be. To the degree that you endow them with reality, to that degree can they manifest. I trust I'm being clear and not speaking in ways that some of you might think fantastic. I tell you, dear ones, there's no such thing as fantasy. Not really. For what one thinks of as fantasy, another might see as reality. If you are fully clairvoyant, very little would be considered fantasy for you. For you would simply be able to, you would be perceiving what is there. Now, another thing that will no doubt occur right around that time frame that we've been discussing will be, there'll be breakdowns on the earth plane of some of the major grids and systems of energy. So were I you, I would even begin now to prepare, set aside some what they call survival foods. I perceive that many of you have already begun to do that, and that is a good thing. For some of you who have perceived the worst case scenario, as they like to call it, it won't be that. In very few places upon the globe will you see total devastations or cataclysms. Those things are occurring now, and they are building up, in that each one shifts the vibratory rate of the Earth planet just a bit, closer and closer to what it's bound to be when all is said and done. Now, as to your relationships with other people, herein is a place that you will want to pay very special attention. And here's why. Simply because everyone, bar none, everyone will simply be automatically more sensitive. I dare say even more clairvoyant. Why, the most common fellow on the street will find himself suddenly seeing and hearing things that he'd not. In most cases, he'd not even believed existed. So there will be a lot of disorientation, I must admit that. However, it won't be much that you can't help others understand, perhaps by explaining to them. So for a lot of you that have sensed that you are here to be teachers, indeed you are. Be prepared, for showtime is about 1.5 years away. Therein you'll find your true calling. For many of you are thrice grown. You've been here on this earth many, many, many times. I would say some of you up to into thousands of past lives. And in each one you've learned lessons that you had not learned previously. In some, you've picked up lessons that you had learned previously, only to take them to the higher level of mastery. Yes, for that too is part of the divine plan, that all end up as masters. Lady masters, gentlemen, all of you. Why, I dare say even your pets, some of those in the animal kingdom, will suddenly take on a whole new luster. And in those days and thereafter, don't be surprised if your pooch, your little dog, will look up at you and you'll get his thought, I'm hungry, feed me. Or things like that. Some of you might note when a bird happens to be outside of your window chirping loudly, it's got a message for you. So you'll take the time and you'll hearken and listen to what he's got to say. And oddly enough, you'll understand what his message is. What had formerly been just chirping, 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 perhaps even annoying you, will now sound like music. You'll hear him singing a little song to you. He might be saying, time to go, time to go, time to go. Things like that. When your dogs bark, you'll be understanding what they're trying to tell you. Look, something's approaching. Or, it's time to clean out this thing in your home, for it's creating a danger and a hazard for you. Many, many, many will be the messages you'll get from nature, from each other, and of course let us not forget the human kingdom itself. I've touched upon it even in this talk, but I shall take it yet a step further. For you'll begin to note, those of you who are so inclined, the literal divinity that lies within each and every one of you, bar none. My dears, regardless of what you think of any people, even those that have the power, that you give the power to annoy you, those that you refer to as the thorns in your sides and such, I say even these, you'll come to see when you are willing to give them the time of day, I suppose I could say, you'll start to note that, no, they've got a story. They may not be very clever or very graceful about how they are trying to relate it. Perhaps they're interrupting somebody else's story. But either way, you'll note that, and that's what you'll see, that everyone has got a story to tell, and we simply have got to work out ways to where everyone can share their story and not feel like they're intruding upon the tales of others. Not only that, but there'll be a lot of spontaneous development in your psychic centers, due, of course, back to the aforementioned rising of frequency all over the planet. It will occur quickly. And yet, you will have plenty of time to adjust to these things, so it's not like you'll be taken total surprise and topsy-turvy. You won't know what's going up and what's going down. You'll know, my dears, you'll know, especially those of you who have taken some time to join us today, or shall be hearing the recording of this session in the days, weeks, and months to come. Some of you have heard about the Ascended Masters, those beings who have simply preceded you on this lovely path of initiation, and who have now attained to higher places and higher dimensions. They exist. Absolutely. They exist. It is of these I would now speak. I am privileged to be a servant unto some of these great beings, usually the ones who have held close to the earth plane, though they've long since outgrown the need to reincarnate. But they have remained, lovingly, loyally, to teach, not unlike some of you who have become teachers professionally, and have remained in that place where you yourselves were taught, to continue the tradition of the teaching skills that you have honed and perfected. Even so are these great ones, on a much vaster scale, of course. The one that I would like to speak to now is he who is honored on this particular day, the 4th of July, the Master Saint Germain. For those of you who are not familiar with him, simply know this: he is one of those elder brethren who took an especial interest in the beginnings of the country of the United States of America. So what, 200 years ago,